Hi guys, Photo Fever here, and today we're going to be doing a lens review of the Tokina 50mm f1.4 FF lens designed for Canon EF mount. And I'm going to start right now. What is up guys, Photo Fever here and welcome back to the channel. And if it's your first time here guys and you want to learn all about Photoshop, Lightroom and everything photography related, start now by subscribing and hitting the bell so you guys don't miss anything. So today is my very first Tokina lens review and we're going to be looking at the Tokina 50mm f1.4. Now there are a bunch of 50mm lenses out there if you're looking for a Canon lens. You've obviously got the Canon f1.4, you've obviously got the f1.2, but then you've also got Sigma, Tamron and Samyang lenses. So is it worth buying the Tokina lens or is it worth buying another one? Let's find out in this review. So the first thing I want to talk about guys is the build quality and the design of this lens. And as soon as you pick this lens up, you really feel the build quality. It's made out of a metal and aluminium construction with kind of a rubber femurium prill around the focus ring and other exterior. You've also got quite a large focus button on the side here, and it also includes a focus window. So overall, this is a very premium lens when it comes to build quality. You also get a very premium and quite heavy lens hood, as well as quite a few elements. This is a very heavy lens. I must say it's a lot heavier than the other f1.4 lenses on the market. And this is just due to the quite complex optical design, but also the premium materials that it makes this lens out of. So overall, it is a very, very good, well-built lens. And what's great about this lens over other prime lenses, it does come with weather sealing. So that is a big advantage if you're planning on going in the great outdoors. So overall, I was really impressed with the build quality of this lens. And it's by far one of the best built 50mm prime lenses on the market today. So because of that, I'm going to be giving it a whopping 10 out of 10 for build quality and the design of the lens. So the next thing I want to talk about guys is the image quality, the all-important image quality. Is this lens good for photos and video? Well, I took this out on one of my portrait shoots to really test this lens out. Now I shot all of the sample images we're going to be looking at today on my Canon EOS R5, a 45 megapixel full frame camera. So this is really going to test the optical performance of this lens. So let's go and have a look at some of the sample images. So let's take a look at this sample image here. Now this image was shot at f2 at a 60th of a second. Now what's great about using the Canon R5, because it has inbuilt image stabilization, you can shoot at lower shutter speeds but still get great sharpness. Again, this is a 45 megapixel camera. So this particular lens is really going to be tested to the extreme. Now I had eye autofocus tracking on this particular shot. So if you go ahead and zoom into the eye, you can see the sharpness is paramount. And I can say exactly the same for the second sample image here as well. Again, shot at f2 at a 60th of a second, and you can see the sharpness of the eyes is really good and really nice background blur you can see here. And again, with the very last shot you've got here, you can see shot in a slightly different location, but again, shot at f2 at 5,000th of a second, and you can see that the sharpness is really, really good. I'm loving the colors, I'm really liking the contrast, and as you can see by the rest of the sample images, the colors, contrast, and also chromatic aberration is really, really good. I must say, I loved this lens when it comes to environmental portrait photography. So as you can see, I was really happy with the actual performance of this lens, but let's see how truly sharp this lens is by pointing it at a graph. So as you can see at f1.4 in the center is very sharp, but if we go and have a look at the corners, you can see it is a little softer, and you can see chromatic aberration and color fringing starting to creep in. Now if we go ahead and step this down to f2.8, it becomes a lot sharper, especially if we look at the corners, and that chromatic aberration is definitely reduced. But at f8, this is where it is at its optimum performance. This particular lens is by far a lot sharper than any of the other Canon EF lenses, 50mm primes that I have looked at. So if you're after a very sharp lens with very few chromatic aberration problems, then this lens is definitely worth purchasing. So let's go and have a look at distortion and vignetting. Now this lens did perform very well in this regard. Distortion is very low, although it is very difficult to find a lens that doesn't perform very well in distortion. Most 50mm prime lenses don't really have many distortion problems. So let's go and have a look at vignetting. At f1.4, you can see there is a mild amount of vignetting. To be honest, this isn't very surprising for an f1.4 lens. And if we go ahead and step down to either f2 or f2.8, you can see all of the vignetting is being completely removed. This is a very good lens for distortion and vignetting. And lastly, let's go and have a look at the Baby Groot bokeh test. This lens is very, very good when it comes to creating a nice shallow depth of field. Again, this is a 50mm f1.4, so most lenses around this focal length and this aperture perform very well. And I think this lens performs very good for its chromatic aberration, distortion, vignetting, but also the smoothness of the background when it comes to bokeh. So if you're after a really good portrait and maybe environmental portrait lens, this lens is going to be perfect for you. So as you can see, this lens did perform very well in my tests, and I must say I was incredibly happy with the sample images I took. The only downside to this lens is the sharpness in the corners wide open at f1.4. I must say I have seen other lenses perform better in this regard, but that is only a very small minor problem. So overall, I was really impressed. So because of that, I'm going to be giving it a 9 out of 10 for image quality. So next, let's look at the size and weight of this lens. And to be honest, this is where this lens really lets itself down. This lens is very large and incredibly heavy for a 50mm f1.4. So here I've got a comparison. The Canon 50mm f1.4 versus the Tokina 50mm f1.4. And as you can see, the Tokina lens is almost double the size. And it really is a very large lens, especially when you think it's just a 50mm prime lens. Again, the Sigma lens, the Tamron lens, but also this lens are a lot larger somehow, the Canon lens. I'm not sure why, but they just seem to be a lot larger. So let's go and have a look at the weight of these lenses. So this Canon 50mm f1.4 only comes in at 290 grams, and it's by far one of the lightest 50mm prime lenses you can buy. But this lens here, the Tokina ones, comes in at a massive 950 grams, by far one of the heaviest 50mm prime lenses on the market. If we go ahead and compare it to the Canon 50mm f1.2, that comes in at 580 grams, or if you compare it very similarly to the Sigma 50mm f1.4, that comes in at 815 grams. Already a very heavy lens, and this is almost 100 grams heavier. So because of that, this lens is very, very poor when it comes to size and weight. You're going to need a very big camera bag to actually hold this lens, but also you need to take in the size and weight aspect as well. So because of that, I'm only going to be giving it a 4 out of 10 for size and weight. So next I want to talk about the focus motor and image stabilization. Now straight off the bat, because this is a prime lens, and most prime lenses don't have it, is image stabilization. I obviously now shoot on a mirrorless camera which has IBIS or inbuilt image stabilization. So I don't necessarily have to rely on the optical stabilization from a lens, which is good because this lens obviously doesn't have it. So how does the focus motor stack up to the prime lenses on the market, especially when it comes to Canon? Well, I must say this lens is a lot quicker than the Canon 50mm f1.4. I would also say it is a little bit faster than the Sigma. Overall, I was incredibly impressed by the quality and the successfulness of the focus motor. It might be really quick, but if it isn't focused, then most lenses are going to be useless. But this lens was incredibly fast, incredibly quick, and also near silent. So if you are wanting to use this lens for video, this is actually a really, really good option. So overall, again, I was really impressed by the focus motor. Obviously, it doesn't have image stabilization, but again, I rely on my camera for that these days anyway. So because of that, I'm actually going to be giving this lens an 8 out of 10 for focus motor and image stabilization. So far, this lens has scored quite high in image quality and build quality. So how does this lens compare to other lenses when it comes to price? Well, I must say this lens is fairly well priced compared to other lenses on the market, and I'll be comparing it to 3 other lenses today: the Canon 50mm f1.4, the Canon 50mm f1.2L, and the Sigma 50mm f1.4. So coming in at the cheapest is the 50mm f1.4 made by Canon, coming in at £389. Now I've already made a review on this lens, and I must say I was not impressed by the build or image quality, although it is the lightest lens on this list today. Now I must say it is a lot cheaper, but it does feel a lot cheaper, and overall the image quality is nowhere near as sharp as any of the other 3 lenses in this review. Next comes the Tokina 50mm f1.4, coming in at just £599, the second cheapest, but by far one of the sharpest and also best performing lenses when it comes to image quality and build quality. Next comes the Sigma 50mm f1.4, coming in about £50 more at £649. Again, a great performer. It comes with build quality and image quality. But obviously, because it's heavier, it's made of more premium materials, it is a lot heavier, coming in at obviously 815 grams. And then lastly is the creme de la creme of all 50mm prime lenses, the Canon 50mm f1.2L. This outperforms every other lens, an amazing f1.4 aperture, but also beautifully sharp and incredibly precise autofocus. This is by far my favorite 50mm prime lens to shoot with. The only problem is it is far more expensive, coming in at £1,479. So you can really see the value for money that you're getting with this Tokina lens over the other lenses. The only other lens that I would say is as good as this is the Sigma, which is only £50 more. So you guys decide what one you prefer. So overall, I'm going to be giving this lens a 7 out of 10 for price. So overall, I thought this Tokina lens performed really well in my review. I loved the image quality and build quality of this lens, especially this is my very first Tokina lens review. I must say I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I must say I am really happy with the results, and I can't wait to review more Tokina lenses. So how did this score overall? Well, coming in at 38 out of 50, this is a recommended lens in your camera bag. I'm also going to be giving it a silver award for image quality, because I love the colors and the contrast of this lens. I much preferred it over the Canon 50mm f1.4, especially as that lens I did feel was very soft. And if you want to see the full lens review, I'll make sure to put the link in the description. And overall, I thought this lens was definitely worth a spot in your camera bag. Again, guys, if you want to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, it really does help my channel grow. Also, guys, if you want to hit the bell notification so you guys don't miss any of my latest content. Now, if you want to watch more lens reviews, I've got a playlist just up here. Or if you're more interested in maybe Photoshop tutorials, I've got a playlist just down here. But until next time, guys, keep creating.